You'll notice that my title has the term strategist in it. Um, and it's really a term because I couldn't find a better one for all the things that I've been doing over the last 20 years, which has generally involved design, engineering, product management, and trying to run a business all at the same time. So the strategist is something that I use because I can't find a better name. And speaking of better names, there's a product that you're here to listen to or listen about that could use one. Design Sprint. So if we take the two words, we unpack this a little bit. You have design, that is a way things look and behave. And then you have sprint, which is a term steeped in a lot of engineering history in agile software development as a really well-established process. When Jake Knapp, the author of Design Sprint, the book, and the creator of it, first came up with this, I wish he had used a tool like GoDaddy's name checker, right? So when you're creating a business for the very first time, you have this awesome business idea and you want to name it, you're going to type it in GoDaddy and it's like, and you hope that the .com exists. That's what I did. Typed in readysetgo.com. It's like, yes, this is going to be the most awesome business. No, it's taken. Oh, that sucks. So let's go and pick the .co or the .io. No, I picked .design, so that's our URL right now. Okay, .design. So if Jake had the ability to, instead of GoDaddy, had something like innovationprocessnames.com, and he typed in design sprint, he would have returned something like this. Design Sprint is a terrible name. You're going to confuse the daylights out of everyone working in tech for the rest of time. Please choose a different name. Might even have that little disclosure at the bottom. More button. Sprint is a term developed by Ken Schwaber and Jeff Sutherland in 1995. It's part of the Agile Scrum process that describes a repeatable time box to help engineers develop and deliver software. None of that happened. And we're stuck with the name Design Sprint. And like other things, we've grown to love it. Like Brussels sprouts. And my children. So let's unpack this. Design Sprint is a 5-day process to validate big ideas. It's really skewed towards digital products, but it certainly can be used for marketing, for service design, for process design, a number of different things. Today we're talking specifically about products. It's an excellent methodology. It's underpinned by design thinking, and I've run design sprints now for over 40 different companies, and every time I do a talk, I add 10 to that number. So the principles of design sprints. Let's jump in. It's not a meeting or a series of meetings. Come on in, no problem. Or not. It's not a meeting or a series of meetings. It is a workshop, and you're expected to work hard. It emphasizes individual critical thinking over group thinking. And it certainly tries to minimize the hippo effect. Everybody know the hippo effect? Show of hands. Well, I love hippos. Look at Betsy. She's eating a watermelon. She's super sweet. Also, they can kill you. So keep the hippos out of the room as much as possible. You also don't need to be an artist. If you can draw a rectangle, a triangle, a circle, and a squiggly line, you've got the skills to participate in a design sprint. And you should. This is a big one. Ideas are cheap and disposable. Mark and I were at a meeting the other day, and I mentioned this in the meeting, and like all these execs, they just turned really foul really quick because they wanted to protect their idea. Ideas are cheap. At the end of a design sprint, the outcome, you can't lose, because you either have a big win or a really fast fail that the outcome of which is always positive. And finally, you can only call it a design sprint if you test the solutions with real people. And this is an important one. It's not an official design sprint principle or anything like that, but I've run a number of sprints and or I've experienced and witnessed design teams or product teams getting to the prototype stage and saying, throwing your hands up in the air, it's like, okay, we're done. Let's build this thing. We've got it. And that's not true. You have to test. So here's a summary slide in case anybody wants to see them all together. I made it a little bit convenient for you. Okay. There's something that really bothers me about design sprints. 5 days is hard to sell. If anyone knows about a design sprint process and the methodology behind it, it's a 5-day process. And if you're someone like me, someone on the outside selling design sprints as a service to an organization trying to solve complex business problems with technology, trying to recruit 5 people from the cross-functional teams from across the organization that are generally in leadership roles and bring them together for an entire week without access to any of their phones or email and whatnot is a very, very hard sell. So I want to give you an example of what that looks like in a sales call that I run. So I'll start with, hey, Ms. Brown, I'd like to propose that before we go down the road of building something, we first develop a number of ideas, prototype the best one, and test them on customers. That's what I say. And she says, oh, I love the sound of that. So I go, great. That process is called a design sprint. And she says, like an agile sprint. But my team already does that. See where the naming problem already starts? I go, no, a design sprint is different. It's an innovation process that brings your team together to solve a problem in a workshop setting. You got confused by the name because, and then I sort of trail off. She interrupts me and says, all right. Who do you need for my team? And I say, I need 5 to 7 people in leadership positions across your company for 5 consecutive days. That's what I get. And then, ain't nobody got time for that. Now, if that joke fell flat, I understand. It's from 5 years ago. I'm old. So I just want you to follow the instructions on screen. You're doing well. You're doing well. So someone on the outside selling design sprints. I want to bring that angst again to why I have trouble with the formal process of design sprints. So my goal over the last 4 years of me doing this is to use less client resources and execute a really high value design sprint over a perceived shorter amount of time. How do I do that? So let's just take a look at what the design sprint process looks like between days 1 and day 5. Above the line or above the text, you'll see that there are 5 phases: understand, sketch, decide, test, and prototype and test. And below the line in pink, you'll see almost the same words because those are the design thinking stages. So you see, underpinned by design thinking. As much as people tell you that it's not, it totally is. So what I'm sharing with you today is how I run design sprints, how I've changed the process to actually suit my situation as an outside consultant providing sprints to companies. So let's start with what the understand process actually looks like. You define a goal. There's an activity called asking the experts. I'll talk about that. You write down how might we's. Everybody familiar with how might we's? One? Okay. Maybe that'll be the workshop after. Then you go through a process of mapping, and then there's some dot voting to help you actually make decisions in the room. So my first problem with that stage is that you're supposed to do all of that in one day. If the experts in the Ask the Experts section is basically an interview process from people in the organization. If they don't show up because of some kind of a conflict in scheduling, you're kind of screwed for the whole week. Okay? It's problem number 1. Problem number 2, how was that problem chosen to begin with? You know, What supporting research was it actually based on? Don't know. And I, for my own sort of personal insecurities, have a really hard time justifying to an executive team that I'm standing in front of that they should spend an entire day explaining to me what their business is about and what their business problem is about. It's like walking into a room completely unprepared. Um, like you're going for an interview and you have no idea who the job is or who the employer is. Or like going to a dinner party that your friends invited you to, and you don't bring your own gluten-free and vegan meal. I do that. Don't you guys do that? So here's my version of the understand phase. First thing, define a goal with the leadership team in a 1 to 2 hour meeting way before the design sprint ever starts. This is the pre-sprint. The second part, you spend a week of research understanding who the customers are, you walk in their shoes, you understand their pain points. 2 years ago, I started a product with a middleware company to completely automate their paper-based system. I ran a design sprint with them using this philosophy, where the first week I actually went around in a hard hat and steel toe boots and went through the construction process that these folks follow to run their particular operation. The next up, you'll prepare research findings, you'll put that in a document, and you'll finally share that with the organization. Then you'll create a map of the existing customer experience. That's called an experience map. If you're unfamiliar with that, we'll talk about that after. If you have questions, write them down. I'll answer them after. And then you can do this. See what I did there? Okay. Next up, so now day one actually starts. You're ready to begin your sprint. And you do that by presenting the goals that you've already established with the leadership team. You're going to present the research findings from everything that you've done the week prior or the 2 weeks prior. And you'll even pin up this experience map that you have put together. You're not going to try to get the team to do all of this stuff in real time. It's just a big waste of time. The second part is you writing down these how might we's and then dot voting what the best ones are. Okay? Where does this take you? You're at the morning of day one. Next up, you're going to jump directly into sketching solutions. And this is where the exciting part is. This is what everybody's been waiting for. Let's develop some solutions for all the things that we're working on. You'll use a process called the 4-step sketch, and you'll develop more elaborate solutions by sketching an individual solution. Okay, let's do a little recap. So what did we do so far? We took days 1 and day 2 of the typical design sprint process. We stretched it out, the understand part, where we did some prior research. We collected a bunch of observations, and we've done the activities that you would otherwise do in day 1 and day 2 in one day. So now you've got just one day. Next up, day 2. So the process of agreeing on a single solution by combining all solutions and then building a realistic prototype. Right? That's what the goal of day 2 is supposed to be. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, we're going to join days 3 and 4. Remember from the way back slide what days 3 and 4 were. They were to decide on what solutions should be even prototyped, and then day 4 was to prototype. We're gonna join those two things together. We're gonna do it in one day. How, you might ask? Okay, I'll tell you. So in the morning of day 2, it's time for some consolidation. Okay, dot voting to the rescue again. We love dot voting. And then you vote on all or parts of the sketch, of the individual solution sketches, to make this Voltron of ultimate sketches, an ultimate solution. You bring it all together. And now it's prototyping time. But let's step back a little. The design sprint book was published in March of 2016. 4 years ago. A lot of stuff has happened since then. Skip the dishes became a thing. We lost the headphone jack, and Donald Trump became president of the United States. The world has moved on since, and people have more higher expectations to do more complex things, especially in prototyping. The book, if you ever read it, recommends using Keynote to build your digital prototype. I say, hell no. I'm never going to make a prototype in Keynote. So, what would I do? We're going to make prototypes with paper. I know, you're thinking, crazy thought, why would anybody do this? He just said that the world has moved forward. This seems like we're moving like a decade or two back. But you got to consider something. You got to consider who the people are in that room on day 2 to try to actually make this happen in such a short period of time. You've got designers, you've got engineers, you've got managers, you've got people from customer service, customer success. They're all over the place. So a designer might obsess over pixel perfect precision for their designs. That takes a long time. As a manager, you might be putting out fires every day and leading people to steer them in the right direction for what they're trying to build. As an engineer, you might build things with real code. It also takes time. And when things take a lot of time during a design sprint, ain't nobody got time for that. So paper prototyping is the fastest way to articulate solutions in a group with little to no learning curve for anyone involved. And the materials are really simple. You need Sharpies, some sticky notes, some tape, and my favorite is a human computer, the person that actually simulates moving paper around. It's great. Okay, quick recap. We're 4 steps in, resulting in a paper prototype that we're confident actually solves the challenge properly. How are we confident? Because when you built that paper prototype within your internal team, you sort of shuffled it around, you tested the UX flow, and you feel pretty confident that it's good. It's worthy of going to the next step. But what is that next step? Testing, right? Wrong. The risk of testing a paper prototype, I'm going to read this slide because it's so wordy. The risk of testing the paper prototype with real customers is that they are not able to suspend their disbelief long enough to achieve objective test results. Does that make sense? You're going to show someone in 2020 a bunch of pieces of paper and ask them to imagine that this is your software solution, and they're going to give you accurate results. That's bananas. It doesn't work. So what do you do instead? Disband the sprint team and call in a professional. Yes, that's what you do. And that kind of professional is hopefully members of your original sprint, and they're either UX designers and UI designers, and if you're lucky, a UX writer as well. And what they're going to be doing over the next 2 days is converting that paper prototype that the collective design sprint team created, and you're going to convert that to a high fidelity digital prototype with modern tools that actually allow you to do that. So modern tools like Figma, my tool of choice, or you could also use InVision, you could use Adobe XD, but it's the design work that actually boosts the fidelity of that product. So the tests now, so while they're doing that, you are going out and recruiting testers to test this digital prototype. That's in high fidelity. And we're still in our 1-week range. They're conducted as one-on-one sessions with at least 5 individuals. So you want 5. Less than 5 is not you're not going to get as much learnings. Way more than 5, you're going to see that it plateaus out, and there's not much more to learn from the product that you have at the time. So finally, your tests are recorded, the observations are captured, insights are derived, and after reviewing the recordings, And you make some iterations to the actual prototypes with each consecutive test so that they're as good as possible. We're almost done. The digital prototype, the recordings, the observations and insights they finally shared with the original sprint team, and now they have all the information they need to make a decision to either do one of two things: to build it or reiterate and test some more. Um, but they have enough information to do that. And now we're done. And that is how I run a design sprint. Thank you.